This video is going to show a different way of solving by completing the square. The hint is actually you're going to convert it to vertex form and then solve. Solving by completing the square is very easy when your a value is 1 and your b value is even. In this case, our a value is not 1. So completing the square algebraically is much more difficult. However, you can still complete the square by converting it to vertex form and then solving. However, converting to vertex form does not need to be done algebraically. In fact, you can just find the vertex using your calculator. So my note here is going to be find the vertex using your calculator. And to do that, you actually press in your calculator, you'll do second, trace, and we're not finding an intersection, we're finding the vertex, which is either your minimum or your maximum. So it'll be min or max. So I'm going to show you how to do that in the calculator. Get my calculator out. I'm going to go to my y equals, I'm going to graph this. I have 5x squared plus 20x minus 60. I'm going to graph this just to see if I'm going to have a minimum or a maximum, and I should know, since my a is positive, it should open up, therefore I should have a minimum. So I'm going to make sure that that works. Now, my graph looks like that. I know that it went down and then it came back up. But the problem is I can't actually see the parabola, the actual minimum. So I can still find the vertex right now just by doing the equation or doing the calculator part. But I can also zoom out so I can see the vertex. So I press zoom, and I want out, so I go to 3. But notice my screen has not moved. I have to press enter on the screen for it to actually zoom out. So I press enter, so it will zoom out. I still cannot see my vertex, so I can actually press enter again for it to zoom out again. Now, it becomes really distorted, but you can see that the vertex is down here. It went down and then shot back up. So what I want to do is, now that I can kind of see it, I'm going to do my second trace min or max. It is a minimum, so I'm going to press second, trace, then I want the minimum, so I want number 3. Now, do you notice it says left bound? That means it wants to be to the left of our vertex. So we go to the left until I'm on this side of the vertex. And I don't have to press that many times. I am on the left-hand side of my vertex. So I press enter, but now it says to go right bound. So now I have to press right until I'm on the right side of my vertex. And as long as I'm on the right side of my parabola, I should be fine. I press enter. I don't want to guess, so I press enter again. It says that the minimum, and that's what we're looking for, is the minimum, is at 2 and 2 down here, so that's really rounds to just a -2, and then at a -80. So I'm going to write out that the vertex, I'm just going to write this out up here, the vertex is actually at -2, -80. Now vertex form goes back to that y equals a parentheses x minus h parentheses squared plus k. So we want to plug this in, but the problem is that we only have the vertex. We have a, h, and k. We have the h and k, but what is our a? Well, the fact is the a from the original problem is still the same a. So I'm going to make a note of that over here, that the a is the same a as your original. That means that instead of me having to find a by doing the math, I already know it. Our a value is equal to 5. That means that I can put this into vertex form now by just plugging in my numbers. Vertex form, I'm going to keep the y and x as letters. So I'll have y equals a is 5, parentheses, x, minus h. My h is the -2. So if we remember from vertex form, you're going to change your h value. This is a -2 right now. We're going to turn it into a +2, putting it into our parentheses, squared. But we're going to keep the value of k as it is, so it's going to be -80. Now the reason we did this is because now it just looks like vertex form, and we can solve using square roots, because all we have to do is convert this to a 0, and then it's just square roots. So this is vertex form. Now what we want to do is just convert it into equal to 0 and solve. So I'll make this 5 parentheses x plus 2 parentheses squared minus 80 equals to 0 instead of y equals. And now I just want to get that x by itself. So I want to add 80 to both sides because we're solving. We're going to add and subtract away first. So we have 5 parentheses x plus 2 parentheses squared equals a positive 80. Then we're going to divide both sides by the 5 to get rid of that parentheses, or to get rid of the 5. So we'll end up with parentheses x plus 2 parentheses squared equals 80 divided by 5 is 16. Now we still have to get the x by itself, so we have to get rid of the square and the 2. The 2 is inside the parentheses, so we have to get rid of the squared first. So I'm going to rewrite this so I can take the square root. X plus 2 parentheses squared equals 16. Take the square root of both sides to get rid of the square. We'll be left with x plus 2 equals. Since we took the square root of a value, we have a plus or minus. And the square root of 16, that 16 is a perfect square, so this will become just 4. And we still got to get x by itself. So I want to subtract the 2. So we'll have x equals, since I'm subtracting 2, I'm going to put it in the front. Whatever we move right now, we're putting in the front, because the plus or minus has to stay with the 4, so plus or minus 4. So what happens now is that we actually have x equals negative 2 plus 4, and x equals negative 2 minus 4. So x equals negative 2 plus 4 is a positive 2, and then negative 2 minus 4 is equal to a negative 6. So we can still check our answers by plugging it back into the original. Now the y should really be equal to a 0 because that's what we changed it to when we convert it from vertex form into just an equation. So we're going to plug in our numbers and make sure it still equals to 0. So we're going to plug in the 2 first. Plugging in the 2 first. Let me get out of my graph. Plugging in the 2. 5 parentheses 2 parentheses squared plus 20 times 2, then minus 60. It is equal to 0. Then I'm going to try that negative 6. Do the same thing. 5 parentheses negative 6 parentheses squared plus 20 parentheses negative 6, and then minus 60. It also equals to 0. Therefore, our two solutions are correct. The reason why I wanted to explain this one is because if your a value is not 1, you can still convert this into vertex form and solve using square roots. This is why completing the square can still work, because your completing the square creates it into vertex form, and all quadratics have a vertex. So if your a is not 1, you can actually just find the vertex using your calculator, and your a value is still the same. Then just put it into vertex form. Then just solve.